This is the Smith&Wesson 500 Magnum 8 3/8 inch barrel, the most powerful handgun ever made in the history of the world. 15 inches in total length, weighs 5 pounds loaded. The cylinder is 2 inches in diameter and 2.5 inches in length from there to there. Can fire up to a 700 grain bullet. Standard rounds coming out at 2,600 foot-pounds of energy. This thing is a monster. Let me give you a little shot down the barrel. I want you guys to take a look at this fiber optic front sight that you can get on here. For a size comparison, here is a 357 Magnum. It's about as big as the 500 Magnum cylinder. Another size comparison, here's a quarter. I love these 500 Magnums. Most things that I'm into is the big caliber guns, as most of you guys know, and this is just something great that Smith&Wesson came out with in 2003. Action is buttery smooth. Trigger pull is nice, light, and crisp. I mean, just smooth as silk action, and you barely touch this thing. You just barely, I'm barely going to put any pressure on there at all. Click. I couldn't even tell when it broke. It was just a smooth, light pull, and then it broke. Excellent action, and that's factory. It's factory action on this 500 Magnum. His brother's here. We've got a little surprise for you. That is my 4-inch barrel 500 Magnum. Can shoot the same loads as the big guy. It's just a shorter barrel. Basically the same compensator on the front. It has the ramped front sight instead of the fiber optic sight. And I have fired, let me think, I fired both of these. I would have to say I've fired probably a couple hundred through this, and probably only about 100 through this one so far. I had this one before I had this one here. I'm going to tell you guys that's never fired these, or maybe you have one, you've never fired it. When you take one of these out, a gun like this, you shoot about 1 cylinder worth, about 5 rounds, and you feel like, yeah, that's good. You're about done, ready to go, I'm telling you. So I don't ever expect that I'll have a high round count through either one of these guns. The rounds are not cheap at all. They vary depending on what stores you go to or where you go online. The last set of 20 rounds I bought were from a Gander Mountain, which is normally higher than a lot of places, but it was $80 for 20 rounds of some quality hollow points. And I do have a couple of films up shooting this one. I have a film of me shooting it at the range, and then I show it in slow motion. And you can see a giant fireball flame coming out of the end of this one and it just like engulfs the whole screen, and then you see it dissipate. A lot of people ask me about what these are like to fire. So I'm going to do some explaining, because I realize there's a lot of guys on here that don't get around stuff like this. Maybe you live in another country. Maybe you're in a state where things like this are restricted, or you've never been around one. So I guess the question I get most is, what does it feel like to shoot these? Now, first of all, I'll start off by telling you that I really don't feel a difference with either gun as far as the kick, okay? I know people always think that by logic they think this one kicks less, but when I fire these guns, it feels the same with this one as it does with this one. If I was blindfolded, I don't think I'd be able to tell, but I would know which gun I'm holding because this one weighs less. This one feels a little bit more balanced in the hand because you have less up front, okay? Now when you pick up the 8 3/8 inch barrel, this is very top heavy. Okay, this is hard for me to even hold out for a long period of time. There's so much weight on the front of this gun. Sorry, I was off frame there. There's so much weight up top on this gun, it's got a lot of heft to it, okay? Now when you pick up this one, this is a little bit more balanced. Feels much more easy to wield, okay? But it's still, this is still a very big chunk of metal. Okay, I'll put the 357 Magnum up again beside the shorter one, just for a little comparison. There's a 357 Mag Smith compared to the 4-inch barrel. Okay, anyway, back to what I got off subject from. I want to talk about some questions I get about these. And I've already explained that to you, but people want to know about the kick of these things. That's the first thing they want to know. Well, I'm going to be honest with you guys. These things are not really a pleasure to shoot. I don't shy away from anything, from any of these big bore guns. I love them. But I have to admit, it's not really pleasurable when this thing goes off. There's just too much going on. Basically what I've told people is, when I shoot this gun, it feels like a big jolt of electricity just hit my shoulder in the arm that I'm shooting with. And it just thumps. I mean, it's like a thump. It almost feels like a small explosion occurred. Okay, and I have read by some people that know what they're talking about online that if you was to fire one of these just one time with no hearing protection, you could damage your hearing in that one time, just one time. So I would never recommend shooting these without hearing protection on. Okay, but basically when you shoot these, and you'll see in the video I shoot this one-handed, where you're holding right here in the palm of your hand, I had marks, and not marks, I had a red mark on the inside of my hand right here, in the pad of the palm of my hand, for I would say a good 12 hours after shooting a box and a half through that. The mark was still visible to me up to about 12 hours later, and I think by that time I was in bed, so I don't know actually when it went away. So another thing that happens is when you shoot this one-handed especially, right here, your middle finger under the trigger guard, the metal on that trigger guard, this gun goes off so hard and so furious. This trigger guard comes back and busts this finger so bad that this was had a welt on it right here. Now mind you, that's shooting one-handed. I don't recommend everyone to shoot these one-handed. I know there are guys that do it. But it looked like I had a welt. It was a little swollen and it was red. Another thing that was happening to me is, after I would pull the trigger right here, the inside of the trigger guard was busting my trigger finger. Because with one hand, there's only so much pressure you have on this gun, trying to counteract all of that force. It is a lot better to shoot this with two hands, but even then, In my opinion, when this thing goes off, the rubber grip right here in your hand feels to me like somebody took a rubber mallet and just whack, you know, right in the inside of the hand every time. The muzzle flash is just, I'm shooting inside of a gun range and all the lights are on, but it's not really bright lit. And the muzzle flash on this thing is just amazing. It's almost like, for a split second, it's almost like a big burst of flame from side to side. Pretty much in the whole area in front of you as far as you can see. You'll see in the slow motion video that I have. I do love these guns, and I don't ever plan on getting rid of either one of these. I will shoot them on occasion, but to me, this isn't a gun that you go out and you do extensive shooting with. I'm sure somewhere there's a guy that'll say, well, I got one and I shoot it all the time, but that's the exception, not the norm. I love them. As far as holsters, you can get shoulder holsters for these. I haven't bought anything as far as holsters go for these guns yet. They're very weighty. Even this one's pretty heavy. It just feels a little more balanced because of the shorter barrel. But I really do like these guns. You know, it's something that I had to get. This was the first one I bought, and I think it was just about, it's probably been 2 years ago I got this one. This one I believe I got in 2004, a year after they came out, okay? And the prices have risen dramatically from when I got these. There's different variations of the 8 3/8 inch model. This one has the removable fiber optic sight, and I do have the regular blade sight in the box that came with this. And it has another compensator that's a little bit longer, okay, for shooting the hard cast bullets. This gun was, I'm wanting to say $8.99 before taxes. I paid like $9.60 out the door. Last time I was at the same gun store where I got this from, in 2004, this gun was, I believe, $11.49. I believe it was $11.49, if I'm not mistaken. It was either $10.49 or $11.49. This gun here I bought used, but it was like new. I think the guy had had this like 5 years, and it didn't look like it had as many rounds as this one did through it. I picked up this one for $800. These are easily going for $1,300 with this setup, with the removable compensator and the extra one, and the fiber optic front sight with the blade sight in the box. Smith even gives you the tools to change this stuff out in the box that came with this gun. And the guy had the box, all the tools, the other sight, the other compensator. Went up to Cleveland, Ohio. Boom, here's the cash, buddy. Thank you. See you later. Have a good day. This one was bought at the gun store when I got it. And like I said, these are probably going to be two guns that don't get fired very often. But I always want to have these in my collection. They're a big chunk of steel, and there's a lot of stainless steel here, guys. You're looking at a lot of stainless steel on that table. And I love them. You know, now, if you're a guy that doesn't have guns, or maybe you're new to guns, or maybe you just turned 21, I don't really recommend that you go out and get this as your first gun. I would say, you know, maybe get a Glock 19 something, get a revolver, 357 Magnum. You know, learn to shoot for a while. Learn how your stance is, how your grip is. Once you get all that down pat, later on, then go get you one of these guys. You know, when I was a new shooter and I was a young kid, I don't think I would have wanted to start out with something like this. I started shooting very young. I started shooting at the age of 3. And it was all safe, and it was all with an adult supervision, and it was mainly 22s, but I was 3 years old, and my dad got me into shooting when I was that age. One of the reasons why I'm so into guns still to this day, a lot of people wonder, you know, why are you so into guns? You know, it seems like you eat, sleep, and breathe guns. Well, probably my first memorable moment since birth was probably the time when I was 3 years old and they put a .22 rifle or a .22 handgun in my arms, and they taught me how to shoot it before they gave it to me. And they said, here, stand here and go ahead and shoot it. And I had, you know, my dad standing right there with me. And, you know, what more memorable did I do from my birth to my 3 years old other than shooting? There's probably nothing that I'll ever remember other than shooting a gun. Okay, so I feel like I was almost born with a gun in my hand because there's nothing that happened to me in my first 3 years of life that was memorable enough to be like shooting firearms. Then I started shooting shotguns. My dad had me shoot a 12 gauge, or let me. I wanted to. He didn't have me, but he let me. When I was 12 years old, I was always a bigger guy. Even as a kid, I was always bigger than those that were my age. So at the age of, I believe it was 11. Okay, I'm pretty positive it was 11. I might have said 12, but pretty sure my dad said I was 11. I got to shoot the 12 gauge. I really didn't have problems with it. I hung on to it. I held it like you're supposed to, and I fired the gun, and I loved it. So ever since I can remember, and from my first memorable memories, I've had a gun in my hand, and it still continues on through this day. You know, the way you guys see me on here is the way my family, friends, and peers and associates know me in real life. Okay, they pretty much know me as, yeah, that's the gun guy. Yeah, you know, ask him. You know, if there's something you need to know, or people that want to know a good price, or the gun they're going to buy, is this a good price? This is a used gun that they're looking at. They call me, and I can talk about that stuff all day long. I don't have any problems with that. So, sorry guys for rambling on and on. I just kind of started on that, and I just felt like going with it. Okay, so that's a little bit about me, a little bit of inside story that I don't do a whole lot of on here. But back to the guns. This little thing feels like nothing now. And yes, this is also unloaded. All guns were cleared before and after I set up the camera, both times. Okay? When I brought the guns into the room, they were cleared. And then when I set the camera up and got everything ready here and the camera angle, I cleared the guns again. But this one is unloaded. But this is a Scandium 357, and this feels like nothing. I mean, this weighs about 10 ounces unloaded. It just feels like a toy. These guys right here, these are monsters. And I recommend you try one of these out if you never have. Second recommendation is, if you've never tried one of these before, maybe just put in 1 or 2 rounds. Alright guys, this is Humans for Targets. You'll be seeing this stuff out on the range soon. Nice talking with you guys, and I'm out.